My name is Mary Thompson. I'm 52 years old and I've been a widow for 6. Sometimes, I still stumble over that word widow. It's as if time froze the day my husband David's heart stopped, and along with it, everything I believed about love. My house is small, quiet, too quiet for someone who spent half a lifetime trying to be heard. These days, the only steady sound is the tick-tock of the clock on the living room wall, the same one that kept time through our arguments, our cold dinners, our late nights thick with distance. David was a respected man, hardworking, admired by everyone, except me. People said I was a lucky woman. I smiled, agreed, but inside I knew, no luck survives in a home where the other person's eyes never really see you. Our marriage was never bad enough to justify running away, nor good enough to keep hope alive. It was lukewarm, and lukewarm corrodes slowly, silently. Some days I watched him from a distance, trying to decipher whether anything was still there. Other times, I'd just wonder how many lies can fit inside an "I love you" said out of habit. I want you to know that I'm relieved to finally share my story. Thank you to the channel Buried by Family for listening to me. Please like this video before we continue, it really helps. Now, listen to my story. I can't say I was unhappy all the time. We had moments, a few laughs, a trip or two when it felt like everything might turn out right, but they were flashes. Lights that flared too fast and died before I could warm my hands. What hurt most wasn't the lack of love, was the coldness. That feeling of sharing a bed with a stranger, of speaking and not being heard, of sensing that, night after night, the space between us grew a little wider, and, over time, the suspicions came. Different perfumes on his shirts, calls cut short the second I picked up, business trips that got longer and longer. I never wanted to admit David was cheating on me, maybe because, deep down, I was already too tired to fight for something that had died a long time ago. But there was someone I still fought for: my son, Daniel. He was the reason I got out of bed every day. The reason I endured his father's distant stare and pretended everything was fine. I wanted Daniel to grow up in a home with respect, with dignity, even if the love was already gone. So I did what so many women do. I went quiet, I swallowed, I kept going. I pretended not to see, not to know. I turned my tears into silence, my pain into routine. I took care of everything: the house, the bills, the appearances, while he took care of only himself. When David died, there was no cinematic tragedy. No collapse, no screaming. He simply stopped, and I, beside the bed, felt a strange, guilty relief, followed by a deep sadness for having nothing left to feel. Because, when love ends, grief arrives long before death. I spent years trying to understand who I was without him. The submissive woman gave way to the survivor. The dependent one became independent, even if by force. And in the midst of it all, the silence, that same silence that used to choke me, became my most faithful companion. My son grew up and became a man. Sometimes I looked at him and saw a bit of myself: the kindness, the calm, the effort. But other times, I saw his father. The same proud smile, the same eyes that calculated everything before they felt anything. That scared me more than I'd admit. Even so, I believed Daniel would be different, that maybe, through him, love might get a second chance. On Sundays, he came for lunch. He'd talk about work and plans, and I'd listen with pride, trying to ignore the echo of the past that still hovered over us. Life, though lonely, seemed to have found a kind of peace, a simple peace, almost cold, but mine, until that day. The day everything changed. The day I would learn that true hell isn't losing a husband, it's being betrayed by the very person you gave life to. I had no idea the future held a far crueler betrayal. From the one I loved most. Daniel had always been my hope. After David died, I clung to the idea that my son would be everything his father wasn't: fair, sensitive, loyal. I needed to believe that, because without that belief, nothing I'd lived through would have been worth it. When Daniel was little, I used to watch him sleep. That serene face, those long lashes, the calm way he breathed, it felt like the world was still good. I remembered myself, at that age, full of dreams, and silently vowed he would never feel what I felt, the loneliness of love without affection. I did everything to raise him with dignity. I taught him the weight of his word, the importance of respect, of honesty. I worked extra hours to make sure he had what I never did: good schools, new clothes, opportunities. I never let him go without love. Even when he started to change, slowly, Daniel grew more distant. I can't name the exact moment, but something in him closed. It was David's same look, that cold stare that passes through you without seeing you. Sometimes I'd speak and he'd answer with short, distracted phrases, as if his mind were always somewhere else. And when I pressed, he'd smile that polished smile, just like his father's, and say, "It's fine. Mom, you worry too much." Maybe I did worry too much. Maybe it was the fear of reliving the story that had scarred me so deeply. But there was something in him, a shadow, a pride that grew alongside his ambition. And I, without noticing, fed that ambition, thinking it was love. Even so, there were moments when he disarmed me completely. I remember a birthday of mine, a few months after I turned 50. Daniel came by with a simple cake, clearly bought in a hurry, and gave me a tight hug. "I wouldn't be here without you," he said. I cried. It was the kind of gesture that makes a mother forget all her doubts. That night, I believed my son was still good. But time has a cruel way of revealing truth. And fate, I learned, doesn't forgive those who fool themselves in the name of love. It was a Sunday afternoon, clear sky, hot coffee, when he walked into my living room with a different spark in his eyes. I sat on the couch, curious and uneasy all at once, and asked what was going on. He took a breath, smiled, and said, "I met someone, Mom, and I want you to meet her too." My heart skipped. It had been years since I'd seen Daniel so excited. His eyes had a bright, almost boyish gleam. For an instant, I saw the child he'd been, not the distant man he'd become. "Her name's Emily," he went on. "She's amazing, sweet, smart. I think she's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with." The rest of my life rang in me like music. It was as if, suddenly, everything I had endured had been worth it. All the sleepless nights, the hidden tears, the fear of repeating the past, all of it finally seemed to pay off with that announcement. My son would be happy, and I would be, by proxy. In the days that followed, he talked about Emily constantly. How they met, how she supported him, how she made him laugh. I listened, enchanted, picturing a growing family, a fresh beginning, a home filled with the love mine had lacked. I promised myself I'd do everything to make that wedding perfect. When he finally asked for my help, I didn't hesitate. Daniel wanted something beautiful, and I wanted to see that smile on his face forever. Even knowing the costs would be high, I offered financial help. I took part of my savings, some investments I'd kept since David's death, and signed commitments in my name to ensure everything went as planned. After all, what is money compared to a child's happiness? In the months leading up to the wedding, my heart was in celebration. I went to tasting menus, picked flowers, helped Emily choose the dress. She seemed so sweet, so lovely. I felt grateful. With every detail, I thought, this is how love is supposed to be. And for the first time in a long while, my quiet house didn't hurt. I began to dream again about laughter, grandkids, Sundays buzzing with life. It was as if the universe was finally giving back what it had taken. But deep down, something unsettled me. Nothing concrete, just a feeling, the same instinct a mother has when her heart tries to warn her before the fall. Maybe it was the way Daniel looked away when I asked about the money, or the way Emily was always a little too sweet, a little too perfect. But I silenced that voice. I had chosen to believe, and so I closed my eyes to what stood right in front of me, convinced that, this time, love would beat the cold, that my son wouldn't repeat his father's mistakes, that, finally, life would give me peace. What I didn't know was that by financing that wedding, I wasn't buying his future. I was signing the contract for my own downfall. I thought I was buying my son's happiness. In truth, I was paying for my ruin. I met Emily on a Saturday afternoon. Daniel brought her over, saying he wanted to introduce me to the woman he planned to marry. I remember exactly how I felt when she walked through the door, a kind of calm light, a sweetness that felt almost rehearsed, pretty, polite, with that perfect smile out of a perfume ad. The sort of person who wins you over before she speaks. "It's such a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Thompson," she said, extending a firm hand. I smiled, trying to hide my nerves. "Please, call me Mary," I answered. She laughed softly, eyes dropping as if shy or pretending to be married. "Then, Daniel talks about you all the time." At first, I'll admit, I liked her. Emily seemed sincere, affectionate. She spoke about plans, work, dreams. She had that energy only youth carries on to sweetness that reminded me of what I'd lost along the way. When she offered to help with the wedding prep, I felt we were becoming friends. It was as if, at last, I was gaining the daughter I never had. But sometimes, while she spoke, something bothered me. I don't know if it was the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking, or a smile that lingered a second longer than it should. There was something double about her, as if behind that soft voice there was a hidden intention. Even so, I chose to believe the best. What more could I want? My son was in love, and I finally had someone to share joy with. Or so I thought. Over the next months, Emily started coming by often. She helped with flowers, invitations, lists. Little by little, she drew closer in a way that felt almost strategic. She brought small gifts, a cake she said she'd baked, a scented candle, a scarf that looked like my style. She praised everything. My hair, my cooking, even how I set the table. At first it was lovely. Later, it began to feel like too much. "You're amazing, Mary. Daniel's lucky to have a mother like you." It was the kind of line that sounded nice, but left a trail. A faint, strange echo that's hard to explain. Once, while we arranged flowers, she asked if I still thought about David. The question caught me off guard. "Why do you want to know?" I asked. She shrugged, smiling. "Curiosity. I've always heard Daniel say his father was a difficult man." The way she said difficult felt provocative, like she knew more than she should. That night, I felt a discomfort I couldn't explain. For a moment, the same chill I'd felt in David's time returned. That feeling of being watched inside your own home. After that, small things started to bother me. A different perfume on my clothes, even when I hadn't used any. A face cream moved from its spot. My favorite mug broken, and when I asked, Emily swore it was an accident. "I cleaned it all up, Mary. I didn't want to bother you." Sometimes I woke up sure I smelled her perfume in the hallway. Other times, I found my bedroom door ajar, though I knew I'd closed it. Small things, but unsettling, as if someone were testing how closely I was paying attention. Still, I kept my composure. I told myself it was paranoia born of loneliness. But there was something in Emily's gaze that made me doubt. A look that smiled on the outside but calculated inside. Like David's, like Daniel's. Even when I complimented her, "You're going to be a beautiful bride," she'd give me a smile so perfect it felt like glass. Pretty, but cold. Transparent, but lifeless. A smile that reflected the image I wanted to see, not who she truly was. And so, between gentle gestures and sweet words, Emily won my trust completely. I saw her as the daughter life owed me. And she, with meticulously measured affection, let me believe it. Until the day everything started to change. It was a random morning, 1 week before the wedding. Emily stopped by, dropped off a gift, and said I deserved to rest, to take care of myself. In the package was a new jar of my night cream, the same brand I used every evening. But now in an improved version, she said. I smiled, thanked her, and set the jar on my vanity. I suspected nothing. Why would I? That night, I followed my routine. I showered, cleaned my face, and put on the cream, imagining how she'd look in white, smiling beside my son. I fell asleep with a calm heart. Morning brought hell. I opened my eyes to a searing burn. The mirror gave me back a face I barely recognized, my skin blotched with angry red patches, burning as if the fire came from within. I screamed, stunned, trying to understand what was happening. And then, I saw it, the jar on the vanity had been switched. The cream she'd given me wasn't a gift, it was a trap. The day broke to the distant sound of bells, and for a second, I forgot myself. It was my son's wedding day. The date I'd waited for, the day the house would finally be alive again. But opening my eyes turned the dream into a nightmare. The first thing I felt was scorching pain, a sharp, pulsing burn spreading across my face like every cell was on fire. I touched my skin, heat, roughness. I ran to the mirror, and, when I saw my reflection, I couldn't breathe. My face was swollen, flaming red, small blisters beginning near my eyes. I froze. The image looked like someone else's, a woman, disfigured, lost between pain and despair. At first, I thought it was an allergic reaction. I grabbed the cream jar from the vanity, the one Emily had given me, and opened it with shaking hands. The smell made me recoil, immediately, a harsh, chemical reek, metallic and lemon sharp. My heart pounded. The truth stood there in cruel, quiet relief. The cream had been replaced with acid. For a few seconds, I didn't know what to do. The pain throbbed, my eyes burned, fear curdled my breath. I splashed water on my face in a panic, the cold cutting like blades. But it was useless. The burn had already taken hold. I braced my hands on the sink and cried. It wasn't just physical pain. It was the kind born of betrayal, of absurdity, of injustice. Emily had done this, and the question that stabbed through me was simple and devastating. Why? What did she want? Why would someone who called me mom, who hugged me gently, who planned a life with my son, do this? Answers came in fragments as the clock advanced. It was the wedding day. Flowers were being delivered, guests already on their way, and I, the groom's mother, was there, trying to hide my face and understand the motive behind my own destruction. I tried to pull myself together. I held a cold towel over my face and breathed. Every touch was a knife. I looked at the blue dress hanging on the closet door. I'd chosen it thinking how Daniel would smile when he saw me, a smile of pride, of love. Now I was only afraid to show up. And one question echoed inside me. She wanted to keep me from being there. But why? What's Emily so afraid I'll see? I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. With every memory of her, something new clicked into place. The switched perfume, the moved cream, the look that was never the same twice. She'd been preparing for this for weeks, and blinded by illusion, I let her into my home, my life, my trust. I thought of calling Daniel, telling him what happened. But a bitter doubt froze me. What if he knew? I shook my head, pushing the thought away. My son would never allow this. He couldn't be involved. Not my Danny. But the doubt stayed. That icy feeling your heart recognizes as danger before your mind agrees. At 9:30, the phone rang. The wedding planner, confirming the photographers had arrived. Her voice sounded far away, like from another world. I said only what I had to and hung up. The burn worsened by the minute, but my need for answers grew even stronger. I picked up the phone and called Daniel. Nothing. Again. Voicemail. Once, twice, 3 times. Silence. I decided I would go to him. It didn't matter how I looked, how much it hurt, what people would say. I needed to understand. I needed to look my son in the eye and ask if he knew, if Emily had done this alone, or if that poison came from deeper roots. I wrapped a large scarf around my face, put on a long-sleeved blouse, and left. The air stung, but anger pushed me forward. With every step, the cold reminded me of the fire on my skin and of the truth blazing inside me. I reached Daniel's place just before 10, windows open, soft music playing. I knocked, but there was no answer. I tried the handle unlocked. I stepped inside, calling his name. Silence. Down the hall, the office door was ajar. I was about to knock when voices. The first was Daniel's, low, unmistakable. The second, a woman's, sweet, not Emily's. Before I could move, I heard words that froze what little life I had left. Laughter, murmurs of confession, and a sentence that still echoes in my head. She has no idea it's us behind all of it. My whole body locked. I edged closer, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would give me away. Then I heard, clearly, the words that destroyed what remained of my heart. After the wedding, we take the money and disappear. She'll be stuck with all the debt. I stood motionless at that door. I trembled all over, and it wasn't just pain. It was terror, the kind that's born when truth starts to form inside you, even if you refuse to see it. The voices cut through the house like blades. The first Daniel's, no doubt. The second, soft, almost playful. Not Emily, dear God, not Emily. I pressed my ear to the crack and held my breath. She believes everything, Rachel, he said, voice low, controlled. She even signed on as guarantor. When this is over, the bill lands in her name. Rachel. The name rang in my mind. The same voice I'd heard, in whispers, on the phone weeks before. That sweet, coaxing, dangerous voice. My stomach lurched. And your fiancé? The woman laughed, teasing. She doesn't suspect. She doesn't have to, Daniel replied. She's part of it. She knows the plan. After the wedding, we split the money and disappear. She keeps the last name. I keep the bank account. And your mother. My mother. She deals with the debts. It's the least she owes me after everything she made me put up with. I sagged against the wall, knees weak. My own son, the boy I rocked through fevers, the one who said he'd never leave me, was using me. He'd put my name on every contract, every vendor, every deposit. I was the guarantor. He was the beneficiary of my trust. The air thickened. The pain in my face spread through my whole body. Part of me wanted to fling the door open, scream, ask why. The other part, still trying to understand, told me to stay quiet. I kept listening, though every word was a blow. She never suspect, Daniel went on. She's old, fragile, stuck in the past. All she wants is to see us happy. Let her pay the price. Rachel sighed, pleased. You're cold, Danny. Cold. No. Practicable, he said. My father always said too much emotion is what ruins people. A shiver ran up my spine. David's words, the same tone, the same logic. My son repeating the man I'd feared most. Then Rachel said something that made me lean in closer, and her secret. You tell her before the party, or after. After, he chuckled. First, I want to see her face when everything blows up. It's the kind of thing that destroys a person from the inside. The secret. What secret? About whom? My heart hammered so loud I feared they'd hear it. I wanted to run, but something kept me there, the desperate need to understand. Their footsteps moved in the room, papers shuffled, a wineglass poured. The mood was intimate. Daniel and Rachel lovers, he was cheating on Emily, and, from the sound of it, both of them were betraying me. Pieces started fitting into a horrible mosaic, the acid, the lies, the contracts in my name. It was part of something bigger, something I couldn't yet see in full, but I knew this, they were hiding something terrible. I backed away from the door, each step an effort not to collapse. My throat tightened, iron on my tongue. My body wanted to fall, but my mind screamed to hold out. I needed time. Time to understand. Time to act. I stumbled home, the sunlight slicing my skin like it wanted to remind me I was still alive. I locked the door and sat on the floor, my face burning, my heart in ruins. Everything I thought I'd rebuilt, every scrap of peace, was crumbling again. And yet through tears, I made a decision. I wouldn't say a word, not yet. I had to find out what else they were hiding. I needed proof before I moved. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room chair, cold compresses on my face, watching the clock. The hands marched on, merciless, marking time I no longer recognized. Outside, the city slept. Inside, a version of me was born I never thought existed, a woman who had learned, the hardest way, that love can be a mask for poison. And as the first strip of sun slipped through the window, I knew the boy I'd raised with so much love was gone. That wasn't my son anymore. It was the shadow of the man I'd buried years ago. The doorbell rang as the sun climbed higher. For a moment, I hesitated. My face still hurt. Shame at being seen held me back. But the voice on the other side made me open it. Mary, it's me, Linda. I exhaled. If there was one person left in the world I could trust, it was her. I cracked the door, scarf over my face, and met the same warm eyes that had held me in other times of pain. My God, Mary, what happened to you? The worry in her voice undid me. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. I just cried. Linda wrapped me in a tight hug, and that simple gesture melted the ice of my shame. I told her everything. The cream, the pain, the mirror, my burned face. She listened in silence, eyes bright, then drew a long breath. So that's it. She wanted to erase you. I nodded. Linda stepped back, studying me with the sharp look of someone who'd survived her own hell. But you know what? She opened her bag and pulled out a small makeup kit. Today, you're going to be seen. The way you choose. I sat at the vanity, the same piece of furniture that now felt like a battleground. As Linda opened the products, the sweet scent of powder and foundation mixed with my fear and rage. She worked carefully, brush after brush, softening the marks, turning my wounded skin into a new surface. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection and think how life can be cruel and generous at the same time. You're still beautiful, Mary, she said, finishing the contour. I gave a small smile. Don't tease me now, Linda. I'm not teasing. You went through fire, and you're still standing. That's beauty in its purest form. Her words went straight through me. For so long, I'd grown used to being invisible, hiding behind the roles of wife, mother, widow. But there, with a burned face and a shattered heart, I realized there was still strength in me. Maybe it was that strength Emily and Daniel never expected to find. As Linda packed the brushes, I looked in the mirror and for a second saw something I hadn't in years, David. Not the man himself, but his shadow. Memories came in flashes, keys hitting the table, the smell of whiskey, that commanding voice. Alongside them came what he'd always say, There are things a woman doesn't need to know, Mary. For years, I obeyed. I never touched what he hid, never opened the doors he locked. One of those doors was literally a false drawer in his desk. He kept it locked, as if it held the heart of his secret. After his funeral, I never wanted to open it. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of respect. But in that moment, something in me shifted. If the past was tangled with the present, if my pain was his legacy, I needed to face it. Linda, I murmured, standing. Remember David's secret drawer? Of course, the one you said he locked even to breathe. I nodded. I think it's time. She studied my face for a second, weighing the choice. Then she just said, then we open it. Together, we went to the office, a room I'd avoided since the funeral. The air was different, stale, heavy. The desk sat where it always had, a thin film of dust on it, like time had paused to wait for this moment. I knelt in front of it. I ran my hand over the top, hearing David's voice and his chilly promises. There are things a woman doesn't need to know. Well, I did need to know. I needed to know everything. I felt along the bottom of the main drawer until my fingers found a tiny irregularity in the wood, a false panel, almost invisible. With my fingertips, I pried at the seam. The soft metallic click echoed in the room. Linda crouched beside me, eyes fixed. My God, Mary, you got it. The wood came free, revealing a hidden space. Inside, an old, yellowed envelope. My heart raced. I lifted it with shaking hands. My name was written on it, in a hand I knew by heart. David Thompson. Linda whispered, "Want to open it now?" I breathed in. The crack of the seal breaking seemed to fill the room. When I slid out the first paper, the air changed heavy, almost alive. My eyes skimmed the first lines, and the floor vanished beneath me. What I found changed everything. The paper shook so hard in my hands the letters seemed to move. The lamp flickered, throwing shadows over the open envelope as if even the light hesitated to reveal what waited there. It was a birth certificate. Old, yellowed, the kind of document time tries to erase, but truth holds fast. At the top, a woman's name, Margaret Evans. Below it, a child, Emily Carter Evans. For a moment, I thought it was coincidence. But the next lines made the world collapse. Father, David Thompson. My heart stopped. The words swam. The air turned thick, impossible to breathe. David, my husband, the man who swore he loved me, who made me think his betrayals were my imagination. He hadn't just cheated, he'd had a daughter who grew up without my knowing, a daughter named Emily, the same Emily Carter, about to marry my son. My God, I whispered. Linda looked alarmed. What is it, Mary? What's there? I handed her the paper. She read it, frowning, hand flying to her mouth. This can't be real. It's real. It's David's handwriting. The date's 25 years ago, exactly her age. We fell silent. Wind rattled the window, the only sound between us. Each second stretched into an eternity. So, Emily is... Linda began. Yes, I said, stomach churning. She's his daughter, my husband's daughter, which means she's Daniel's sister. Sister hung in the air like a sentence. The truth was too monstrous to hold. Emily and Daniel, engaged, brother and sister by blood, and the worst, they knew, and hid it. Suddenly, everything made sense. Emily's fear of me coming to the wedding, the acid, Daniel's rush to lock up the finances before the ceremony, the secret Rachel had mentioned. I sank to the floor, drained. My God, Linda. They were going to marry, and no one would know. The money, the plan, that was just the start. They were playing with something that crosses every line. Linda knelt in front of me and took my hands. Then, enough crying. Mary, it's time to act. I looked up at her. For a moment, I became the woman who once feared everything. But that fear was gone. In its place was something new, lucid anger, measured, cold. The kind of strength only grows in someone betrayed to the limit. You're right, I murmured. They wanted a show, so they'll get one. We sat together and planned. Every detail, every move. I held the certificate in my hands, and Linda's sharp mind mapped the scene. During the toast, she suggested, when everyone's watching, you take the mic, a proud mother's speech, then, you reveal it. I nodded, eyes on the document, not just reveal, show. I slid the paper into a plastic sleeve. Then I picked up my phone. I know the tech who handles the venue's audio and screens. I'll ask him to set up a little surprise, a presentation, let's say. Linda smiled, a gleam of solidarity. I like how you think. The next hours were intense. I rehearsed each step in my head, the moment, the words, the tone. I needed to look calm, almost happy. The blow had to land when no one expected it. The peak of celebration. Through planning and held back tears, I felt something in me change forever. The woman who once begged for respect was charting her own route to justice. There was no room left for weakness, nor for mercy. Night fell. Linda poured 2 glasses of wine. "To us," she said. "To us," I echoed. The tap of crystal sounded dry and decisive like fate, signing the next chapter. I looked at the envelope on the table, and a strange calm washed over me. I knew what I had to do. I knew the cost, the impact, that nothing would be the same. But it didn't matter. That night, pain finally found purpose, and a mother's love, the love that had borne everything, became the sharpest weapon a woman can wield. No flowers tonight, only truth. The hall was immaculate. White cascades of flowers hung from the ceiling like living snow. Tables glinted beneath candelabra, and soft music filled the air. Everything, absolutely everything, looked perfect. But behind that scene of luxury and promises, all I saw was falseness and silence. I walked in slowly with Linda, feeling eyes follow me. Makeup masked the damage on my face. The pain still burned, but now it was my Elia minute-by-minute reminder of why I was there. "You look beautiful," Linda whispered, straightening my collar. I gave a half-smile. Today, no one erases me. Guests smiled, toasted, praised the couple. Daniel, in navy suit, the perfect man, confident, charming, magnetic. Emily, glowing in lace, radiating purity. But I knew what lay beneath that perfection: shared blood, and a filthy plan. Crystal clinked and the MC announced the newlyweds' toast. All eyes turned center stage. Daniel stepped up with Emily, took the mic, his voice, serene, steady, rehearsed. "Today is the happiest day of my life. I have the woman I love by my side and, in front of me, the people who've always supported me. But most of all, I have someone here who gave me everything, even when I didn't deserve it, my mother." Applause. He looked at me and smiled. A smile so hypocritical, I almost laughed. "None of this would be possible without her," he continued. "She's the heart of this celebration." There it was, the perfect cue, the opening I needed. I breathed in, stood, and walked to the stage. Guests parted to let me through. I took the mic from my son gently. "Thank you, Daniel," I said softly. "But if you don't mind, I prepared a surprise for you and Emily." Soft laughter, curious murmurs. "A surprise?" the MC asked. "Yes," I said, lifting my gaze. "Because true love deserves to be celebrated with truth, doesn't it?" My heart raced, but my voice came out firm, almost sweet. While I spoke, Linda gave a discreet signal to the sound tech ready, as planned. "For weeks," I began, "I watched this union grow, blossom. I saw your tenderness, your bond, your wish to start a new life together. And as a mother, I wanted only one thing: that this new life be built on something solid, on what really matters, truth." Silence fell over the hall. Daniel watched me, uneasy. Emily clutched his arm, her smile starting to falter. "That's why," I went on, "I brought something I believe should be shared with everyone, a memory from the past that completely changes the present." I nodded to the tech. Lights dimmed, the screen behind us flickered alive. The rustle of a scanned page, a slow zoom, and then the birth certificate. Names, dates, signatures, crisp, undeniable letters. Father, David Thompson. Daughter, Emily Carter Evans. A beat of absolute silence, then chaos. Murmurs swelled, first soft, then louder. Emily went pale, lips trembling. Daniel froze, staring at the screen, unable to react. "It's a lie," he shouted, yanking the mic from my hands. I didn't need to answer. The guests, horrified, were already whispering what he was trying to deny. "Same father. No, it can't. My God, they're siblings. She's her husband's daughter." Emily buckled. She tried to speak, but no sound came. Her bouquet hit the floor, flowers scattering like shards of glass. Her mother sobbed, confused. Some guests slipped out quietly, others filmed tragedy turned spectacle. Daniel whirled on me. "You're insane. How could you do this?" I met his eyes, calm. "Me. I didn't hide a man's own child under a white veil." He swiped at the screen as if he could tear the document in two, but it was useless. The image stayed, cold and implacable. "Truth, now public. irreversible. Emily fell to her knees, sobbing into her hands. That white dress looked like a cruel joke now, Daniel shouted, but his words no longer meant anything. The entire room was a storm of voices, cameras, shame. I took the mic again, my voice steady, almost serene. Now, I said, you may toast, not to love, but to truth. I turned and walked toward the exit, Linda at my side. Behind me, voices, tangled shouts, cries, accusations. I kept going, a quiet peace blooming in my chest. I stopped just once, looked back at my son in his panic. I smiled a small, gentle, almost motherly smile. Oh, Daniel, I murmured, don't leave yet. I tilted my head, and the words fell like a sentence. There's still one more surprise, sweetheart. The hall wasn't a place anymore, it was a storm. Shouts, flashes, the thud of falling glasses, fabric ripping on marble. Emily tried to stand, but her legs failed. Daniel looked around, lost, as if the world had collapsed on him. And in a way, it had. I was almost at the door when the second part of the plan unfolded. The moment Linda and I had crafted with surgical care. A side door opened slowly. At first, no one noticed, but when the heels began to click across the floor, dry, rhythmic, the sound cleaved the air like an omen. Heads turned. Silence rippled again. She entered with a steady stride, spine straight, eyes clear with purpose. A long red dress, hair in a perfect chignon, serenity on her face that bordered on cruel. Rachel Moore. Daniel blanched. He still held the mic, but he looked like a boy, now cornered, helpless. No, it can't be, he muttered. Rachel kept walking, eyes locked on his. Surprised, Danny. Her tone was calm, but every word was a blade. Guests glanced at one another, baffled. Who is she? Someone asked amid the confusion. Rachel stopped at center stage, lifted her chin, and with poised, theatrical calm said, I'm the one he really loves. The woman he planned to run away with, after he took all the wedding money. Shock hit like a wave. A chorus of gasps spread across the room. Daniel tried to recover. Rachel, shut up. You'll ruin everything. Ruin, she laughed. No, Danny, you ruined everything. I'm here to show them who you really are. Emily, still on the floor, looked between them, hollowed out. Daniel, what is she saying? But he couldn't answer. His face was gray with sweat. His eyes darted, hunted for an exit. There was none. Rachel turned to me, voice firm. He promised we'd leave together, that the wedding money was just the start, that your mother you would foot the bill. She paused, inhaled, finished. But the worst isn't the money, it's the lie, the kind of man he's become. And you know what, Mary? I didn't come here for revenge. I came to be free. Her words rang with a strange sanctity. Emily lurched to her feet, face twisted by pain and horror. You too, you and him. Rachel only looked at her, silent. Emily stared at Daniel, tears streaming. We're siblings. How could you? How could you drag me into this? Daniel reached for her. She recoiled, screaming, don't touch me, don't come near me. In a burst, she yanked the ring off and flung it to the floor. The metallic ping echoed like the period at the end of a filthy story. Then she ran. She bolted through the doors, shoving anyone in her way. The white dress dragged across the floor, dirty, torn, and vanished into the night like a ghost. Daniel stood trembling, hands over his face. I can explain, he muttered, but no one wanted to hear it. Guests edged away, disgusted, shocked, some filming, others whispering prayers. Rachel looked at me one last time. No hatred in her eyes, only bone-deep wariness. She turned and left, leaving behind a heavy quiet and a man in pieces. I stayed, watching. I felt no triumph, only a strange peace. The cycle had ended, the truth at last exposed. Love, lies, betrayal, all dragged into the light. And I, witnessing my own blood's collapse, felt pain and justice at once. Linda touched my arm gently. Come on, Mary, it's over. I nodded. The hall burned not with fire, but with shame. I knew nothing planned that day would ever exist again. I walked slowly to the exit. Behind me, the echoes of a life destroyed. Ahead, the quiet of freedom, the kind that comes after a storm. I crossed the doors and felt cold air on my face. The world outside kept turning, indifferent to the wreckage behind me. For the first time in a long time, I lifted my head and drew a deep breath. I left with my head high. But hell would still call me that same night. Night fell heavy. The wind made the curtains dance, and the far, steady sound of waves kept time with my heart. Linda and I had come home in silence. Neither of us had strength to speak. What happened in that hall throbbed like an open wound. Daniel's face, Emily's scream, Rachel's empty eyes. It was over, but the end, I knew, wasn't the end. Hours later, the phone started ringing. One call, then 2, then 10. Daniel. I let it ring. With every missed call, guilt tried to rip a piece from me, a mother's reflex, the instinct of someone who's always answered first and thought later. But I stood still, watching the screen light and dim, a cruel reminder that love can also be a prison. After a while silence, for a minute, I thought he'd given up. Then a video call buzzed. I inhaled and answered. His face filled the screen, sweaty, flushed, eyes wild. "Mom," he shouted. "What did you do? You destroyed me. You ruined my life." I said nothing. He barreled on. "The vendors are calling. All of them. The caterer, the venue, the photographer. They're saying the checks bounced. The payments were cancelled." "What did you do, Mom?" My voice came calm, controlled. "I cancelled everything, Daniel. The contracts, the deposits, the guarantees. No money's going anywhere. None of them will get a centant. No one will come after you, because their names are clean. Mine isn't." He blinked, confused. "What? No, that's not I. I need the money, Mom. Just until I get things straight. I can explain." "Okay, it was a mistake. I swear, a mistake." I met his eyes with a serenity that disarmed him. "You lied to me, Daniel. You used me. You put me down as guarantor to bankroll your con. That wasn't a mistake. It was a choice." "No, Mom, I did it for us. I just wanted a fresh start, to get us out of this miserable life. You don't understand." His voice warped, part despair, part rage. "You've always been weak, stuck in the past. I could have given us a new life, and you wrecked it." Linda, watching from the couch, stepped forward. I lifted my hand down. "Daniel," I said evenly, "you weren't going to take me anywhere. You were going to drown me with you. And you know what's worse? You learned to hide poison behind pretty words, just like your father." He went silent. Then the scream. "Don't compare me to him. I'm not my father." But the denial rang empty. "No, Daniel," I said softly. "You're worse, because you had a mother who tried to teach you different." The quiet after that was thick, hurting. I saw tears in his eyes, but something was off. It wasn't remorse. It was fear. Fear of losing control, the money, the manipulation that had always worked. "Mom," his voice was almost a whisper. "I have nowhere to go. I need help." A knot rose in my throat. Every cell in me screamed to save him, to do what mothers do: forgive, shelter, protect, but not this time. Love that protects the unwilling can kill. I drew breath, fighting tears. "Daniel, I will always love you, just not the way you want. Love isn't hiding, covering, paying the bill for lies. Sometimes loving means letting go." He shook his head, frantic. "You can't leave me, Mom. I'm your son." I looked into the screen. "And it's because you're my son that I held on this long." On the other end, he started to shout. "You'll regret this. Everyone will laugh at you. I'll tear down everything you have." It wasn't my boy's voice anymore. It was the cold man reflected in his father's mirror. I took one last look, felt my heart split quietly. Then, without another word, I pressed the button and ended the call. The dry click echoed in the room. For a moment, only the wind answered. Linda came closer, hand on my shoulder. "Are you sure that was right?" "No," I said, "but it was necessary." I walked to the window. Outside, dawn bled into the sky. The first light slipped through the glass and touched my face. For the first time in ages, the silence didn't scare me. It was clean. It was mine. I picked up the phone, looked at it for a few seconds, and turned it off completely. No calls, no messages, no voices trying to blame me for finally being free. And as the faraway ocean hummed the morning awake, a steady thought settled inside me. For the first time, I turned off my phone and felt peace. The next morning rose gentle, wrapped in a new kind of quiet. No phone ringing, no footsteps in the hall, no echoes from the past. Only the light flap of curtains in the open window and the smell of fresh coffee, where Linda was setting 2 suitcases on the table. "So this is it," she said, not looking up. "We're really going." I nodded, a knot in my throat. "Yes, we're ready." The bags were simple clothes, a few documents, keepsakes I could carry without hurting. I left the rest, the house, the photos that no longer spoke, everything that chained me to a story of pain. Zipping the last bag brought a strange feeling, not sadness, not guilt, but a lightness I couldn't name. Like every zip was a small release. Linda laid her hand over mine. Mary, are you sure? I smiled. I'm not sure of anything, Linda. I just know that if I stay, I'll keep breathing the same old air. And I need to learn to breathe again. We took her car on, old sedan, still sturdy, and left before noon. The sky was clear, the wind kind. The road unwound forever, curling through golden fields and trees bowing to the summer breeze. With every mile, the weight lifted a little more. The city shrank in the rear view, and with it, all the ghosts, hot asphalt, the smell of gas and dirt, old songs on the radio, everything mingled into a sense of rebirth. Sometimes, silence between us was as comforting as a hug. Other times, Linda spoke, and I just listened, no answers needed. At one point, she said something that stayed with me. You know, Mary, we spend life believing love is about staying, but sometimes, loving is knowing when to leave a house, a name, a story. I watched the window. The wind played with my hair, sunlight striping my lap. I stood still too long. I murmured, now it's time to walk. When the ocean first appeared on the horizon, a shiver ran over my skin. That blue expanse, alive, deep, called to me, as if it said, here, nobody knows you. Here you can begin again. Linda saw my face and smiled. Beautiful, isn't it? More than beautiful, I said. Endless. We stopped near a little white house by the beach. We rented it for as long as we needed a shelter. A pause between who I was and who I'm becoming. Waves were a constant lullaby, salt air scrubbing the last traces of pain. Days found a new rhythm, waking to the ocean. Coffee on the porch. Writing in a notebook, Linda gave me fragmented words, memories, promises to myself. It wasn't happiness yet, but it was peace. And after so much chaos, peace is almost a miracle. At night, we walked barefoot on the sand. We talked about everything and nothing. We spoke of guilt, faith, second chances. I confessed what I'd never told anyone. Sometimes I still hear their voices. David's, Daniel's, as if the past won't let me go. Linda's silver hair lifted in the breeze. Maybe it's not the past holding you. Maybe it's you, afraid to let it go. I smiled through wet eyes. Could be. We watched the water. Waves came and went, tireless like time. There, between wind and salt, I finally understood what all those losses had tried to teach me. I had to lose everything, the love, the house, the sun, even the mirror, to finally find myself. It was a simple thought, but whole. A quiet period at the end of a story, written in pain. And for the first time, the silence in me wasn't hollow, it was full. We got home late. Linda fell asleep on the couch, and I stayed on the porch, staring at the dark line of horizon. The moon laid a silver path on the water like a distant beacon. My heart felt steady, almost light. Then, in the calm, something changed. A brief, insistent sound. The phone I'd sworn to keep off blinked on the table. Unknown number. The past knocking at the door of my new beginning. I looked at the screen, breathed deep, and, with a chill in my chest, thought, but the past isn't done with me yet. The night felt calmer than the ones before. The sea breathed slowly. The wind drifted through the window with salt and the scent of promises I hadn't yet dared to make. Linda slept, and the house, lit only by a dim lamp, finally felt like a place to rest. But the phone on the table blinked. A number with no name. A soft, persistent ring, almost shy. For a moment, I thought of ignoring it, but something in me asked to look. When the screen lit, I knew. It was him, Daniel. I didn't answer. I watched the display vibrate until it stopped. Then came a message, then another, and another. I picked up the phone with trembling hands. The heart I'd thought was calm kicked again. Curiosity is an old trepanned, a mother's love, one that never fully burns out. I opened the thread. Mom, forgive me. I messed up. I don't know who I am without you. I haven't slept since that day. I thought the money, the plan, all of it, would save me. I just lost everything. I want to come home. The words skittered across the screen like he was still the boy who called me at night, afraid of thunder. But now the fear was different. Fear of himself, his own reflection. And I knew, as much as it hurt, this lesson couldn't be erased with a hug. I sat there, reading those short sentences, steeped in regret and panic. The silence between them weighed more than the words. I could reply. I could say I forgave him, that I loved him, that he was still my life, but that would be turning back. And the way back, I learned, is the same path that destroys. I looked at the ocean and understood. Love isn't return. True love is release. I set the phone on the table and typed nothing. Not a word. Sometimes forgiveness lives in silence, not in forgetting, but in accepting that the past has finished its work. Night went on. Waves blended with the soft hush of wind, and for the first time, there was no pain in me. Guilt had left, and in its place was something new, mature, calm, almost sacred. It was as if the universe whispered that the circle had finally closed. I stepped onto the porch. The horizon was dark, but the moon still drew a silver thread on the water, like a path. I thought of David, of Daniel, of Emily, of everything destroyed and everything born from the ashes. Love, loss, vengeance, truth. Now it all fit together, like the tides that come and go but never stop kissing the shore. I closed my eyes and breathed deep. The air tasted like salt and freedom. Tears slid down, not of pain, of relief. Inside, the phone buzzed once more. But I didn't go back. Silence was my answer. My last act of love for him, and for me. I sat and watched the horizon dissolve into night, and let my heart speak for the first time without fear, without guilt, without shadow. Some truths burn more than acid, but heal what time never could. And the sea kept its steady song. A slow, melancholy music, full of hope. The perfect score for a woman who, at last, had learned to live. Days began to pass, slowly and hurried, gentle, as if time had decided to return each second pain had stolen from me. The waves became my clock, the breeze my comfort, the ocean my confidant. Linda said I was learning to breathe again. Maybe she was right. But inside me, there was still something that wouldn't quiet. A hollow the sweetest silence couldn't quite fill. One foggy morning, the past found me again, not as a voice or a call, but as paper. Linda walked in with an envelope and handed it to me. My hands trembled before I even read it. The handwriting, I'd know it anywhere. Daniel. I sat on the porch, heart racing, and began to read. Mom, I don't know where you are, but the wind brought me here, and maybe it'll carry these words back to you. I want to ask your forgiveness, but I think that word has lost its weight with me. I've spent months trying to understand why I did what I did. I thought I was fighting for freedom, when really I was running from truth. I blamed you, blamed Dad, blamed the world, anyone but myself. And now I see, what destroyed my life wasn't the lies I told, it was the ones I chose to believe. I saw the headlines about the wedding, the photos, people laughing. I thought I'd never look in a mirror again, but today, for the first time, I did. And I saw the man you raised, not who I was, but who I can still be. I don't know if you forgive me, maybe you never will. I just want you to know that I love you, and that I finally understand what you always tried to teach me. Love, without truth, is a prison. Wherever you are, I hope the ocean carries you this letter, and I hope it carries away a little of my guilt. Your son, Daniel. The words ended there, simple, bare, as if they'd crossed the sea just to rest in my hands. I sat still, feeling both their weight and their lightness. I didn't cry. Tears had done their part long ago. I looked out at the water, vast.com, endless, and for a moment it felt like the whole world fit inside that horizon. The waves came and went, like the past and forgiveness. I realized there was no hatred left, no fear, only understanding. Linda appeared with 2 mugs of coffee. You okay? I am, I said. He wrote. She didn't ask what the letter said. She just sat beside me, quiet, honoring the sacred of that moment. I folded the paper carefully, the way you close a chapter without tearing a page. I walked to the edge of the beach. Wind played in my hair. Salt pricked my skin, same marks, now healed. I knelt and set the letter on the water. It floated for a few seconds, then softened and slipped apart in the waves, carried by their gentle pull. And in that instant, I understood. It wasn't only him asking forgiveness. It was life asking to be begun again. The tide drew back, and the horizon looked cleaner. The sound of the ocean merged with the light beat of my heart, now at peace. I returned to the porch, sat down, and closed my eyes. For the first time, the silence had a voice, and it said exactly what I needed to hear. Forgiveness doesn't change the past. It changes the weight the past has on us. I smiled, with the calm of someone who finally understands her own road. and looking out at the sea, I let the last words echo only inside me, a prayer carried by the wind. Some truths burn more than acid, but heal what time never touched. The waves answered steady, soft, eternal, and the world, at last, felt at peace. And that's how I finished telling my story. Tell me in the comments, what would your reaction have been? I want to thank this channel, Buried by Family, for allowing me to share this part of my life with you. This channel needs your support to keep bringing more stories like this one, so click the subscribe button. That way, other women will also be able to share their truths here. On the screen, there's another video you might like, and the icon to subscribe to the channel.